Hey, welcome back. If you joined me you saw my video for release question one, that link's going to be in the comments down here. But you know that I'm not going to show you the problem on here, but I will link to the FRQs in the problem so that you can follow along as we solve this. I do this so that my students can see that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. I scored my 2024 FRQs before I started this process using the scoring rubrics from 2024. And I did not get perfect. I scored a three, a two, three fours, and a three. So that was nowhere near perfect. I want my students to know that they don't have to be perfect. I also try to illustrate the time pressure that you're under, how much time you have, and how thorough you can be so that the students get this. I also do this for me. So if there's something that I don't know or I misunderstand, like on that number two from last year, I can catch myself and fix the issues that I have in my knowledge gaps. So anyway, let's get started on FRQ number two. I have not looked at these. I do them cold, like I told you in the FRQ1. So I'm looking at FRQ2 now. You click the link in the comments and follow along. All right, number two, aphids, tiny insects that feed on plants such as cabbage plants. Farmer wants to reduce the number of aphids in a cabbage field. River located 100 meters south of the cabbage field. The farmer divides the field into 25 regions of equal size. As shown in the diagram, each region has approximately the same number of cabbage plants. Okay, so we see a diagram with the river, plot of cabbage field, and this looks like it's going to be experimental design. The farmer would like to estimate the proportion of cabbage plants in the field that are affected by aphids and believes that the extent of aphid damage is greater for the regions in the cabbage field closer to the river. To obtain the estimate, the farmer is considering three sampling methods. Make sure you're following along. Click the link in the comments so that you can follow along and see this picture because it won't make a lot of sense to you if you can't view the picture. Sampling method one. Oh, yes, okay. Select region three, which is closest to the farmer's house and farthest from the river. Examine every cabbage plant in the region for aphid damage. Sampling method two, randomly select one row, A, B, C, D, or E, for every region in the selected row. Examine every cabbage plant for aphid damage. Sampling method three, randomly select one region from each of rows A, B, C, D, and E. For each selected region, examine every cabbage plant for aphid damage. Okay, again, make sure you're looking at the picture. Part A, explain whether sampling method one is an appropriate sampling method for the farmer to use to estimate the proportion of cabbage plants in the field that are damaged by aphids. And so one, we're going to say no. This is an example of a cluster sample where you select one plot and survey everything in the plot. This is a cluster sample. But it is not random. In fact, I'm going to scratch the cluster sample. So this is not a random sample. And is it regions, right? Yes. And region three may not be representative of the population of cabbage plants in the entire field. I've stated the fact that it's not random. I've stated the fact that it's not likely to be representative. Therefore, it's not an appropriate sampling method for the farmer to use. I don't know, should I say, I'm going to go ahead and say it, that if the farmer is correct, that aphid damage is worse. Make sure I read that right. Yeah, he thinks aphid damage is greater for the regions in the cabbage closer to the river. That's correct. That aphid damage is greater closer to the river. This field's farthest from the river. Method one will likely underestimate the extent of damage. Okay, let's look at B. Using sampling method two, the farmer randomly selected row E and examined every cabbage plant in row E. If the farmer's belief is correct, determine whether the selection of row E is likely to provide an overestimate or an underestimate of the proportion of cabbage plants in the field that are damaged by aphids. Justify your answer. So row E is closest to the river. We'll start with that on B. All 5 plots in row E are likely to have the most aphid damage. Let's just say greater aphid damage than plots in other rows if the farmer's assumption is correct. Hypothesis is correct. Should we answer the question? We're supposed to say, will it be an overestimate or underestimate? Therefore, selecting row E using method 2. Will likely result in an overestimate for aphid damage in the entire field. Okay. Part C. Using the information provided in diagram cabbage field, describe how to implement sampling method 3, which requires a random selection of one region from each of rows A, B, C, D, or E. I'll go ahead and let's see up here. Let's go back to method 3. Look real quick. Randomly select one region from each of the rows A, B, C, D, and E. For each selected region, examine every cabbage plant for aphid damage. So we have to come up with, all right, there are 5 regions in each row. So what I'm going to do is renumber each region in each row. One through five, from left to right. Then for each row, I'm going to use a random number generator. To select one number. One through five. And that will be the randomly selected plot for row A. I'm going to repeat this process for rows B, C, D, and E. And I'm going to say that way we're redoing the random number generator for each one of the rows. That should be sufficient. That should be sufficient, I believe. Okay. That looks like question two. That is. That's question two. All right. We'll do question three next on the next video. Be sure that when you watch this, you click the link for the questions so that you can follow along.